Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It is 10 o'clock. I'll give everybody a minute extra to join, just in case they ran into the proverbial computer restart right before joining the meeting, like I just did. If everybody can sign in, link is in the chat. Thank you, Jennifer. All right, everybody, it is a couple minutes after 10. We'll get this meeting started. Stragglers may join. Just a reminder, sign in online. And our first item up after the reminder to sign in is going to be CenturyLink, their system performance report.
All right. Good morning, guys. Happy Wednesday. I thought it was Thursday for the last 3 hours, so I'm off to a bad start today. This is our data for the month of May. The first one, test completion codes. This basically is showing you guys network performance. This is where the probes keep pinging the server until they reach it. And we did not see anything of concern between May 1st and May 31st. Everything is within the correct scope of the tariff. So good news there. If we take a peek at the next one, this is where we look at the voice quality. So, a 1, obviously, we do not want to see. And anytime the graph is showing a 4 or above, that is our high voice quality. Shows a couple PSAPs down there as well. And for the month of May, we didn't have anything that dipped below the threshold. So good news there. If we look at the next one, this is MOS by the ECMC route. Again, nothing too exciting here, just like the chart above. We would like to see these numbers be 4 or higher. So everything for May on this particular chart did show the 4 or higher, which is great. Next one is the packet loss percentage. This is the ECMC route, and we did see something on there that we didn't love. It looks like it was the week of the 26th, and when we dug into it a little bit deeper, Jeff and I were working with Entrado on this. It happened specifically on the 29th. So anytime there is an issue between the probe and the server, it could be something within the network. It could be the CPE. We did confirm that Entrado and Lumen didn't have anything as far as maintenance during that day. So we're both still investigating with our NOC. I owe you guys an answer on that one. I wasn't able to get it today. Like I said, I shared it with my NOC. I shared it with Entrado. We know the day. It wasn't a specific PSAP. it was almost all of the PSAPs. So it also could have been something with an OSP outage too. So we're still looking into that one. I will have something to you before the next meeting, but I don't believe I'm going to have it before the end of this call. And then again, on sorry, I was still making a note on the last one. This is the jitter. So this is our ECMC route. We look for these numbers to be less or equal to 20 milliseconds. Reminder, we all know this graph is in microseconds. So everything, we were good within range there. So just some concerns this month on that upper, something happened on May 29th. We're not 100% sure what it was. But we do know that it was a market-wide event and it did impact most, if not all, of our PSAPs in some way. When I did look at the deeper detail on this, and I'm going to pull it up on the screen here so that I say it correctly. I'm going to say the wrong thing. We are able to take this information and also look at voice quality. And even though we have something on this chart we don't like, our voice quality was still at that threshold of 4 voice, but we do want to find out what happened on May 29th. Any questions for me? I can't answer specifics on the 29th, but I can take back specific questions if you guys have them.
Are you able to identify what time of day that occurred?
Let me look at. I probably can. Might need to work with my team to help me understand how to look at that. It looks like it was May 29th. All of these times, looks like the top PSAP was Sterling, and it was 1739. And if we cruise down to the end of the day, last PSAP timestamp would have been, hold on one second. This is a really long file. So 1700. So I said that backwards. It would have been from 1211 to the 1700. Started in Pueblo, finished in Sterling. But again, there were a lot of PSAPs, just looking at this, that were impacted. But the voice quality for MOS was where it needed to be. We just need to determine what happened. And I don't know. I mean, we can get information from Entrado, but I don't know how to work the OSP route if we need to go that direction. Again, we didn't show anything scheduled maintenance-wise, so we need to look into it deeper to see.
So what would a PSAP dispatcher have experienced by this issue? Would it have been choppy?
I don't know the answer, but I can ask unless someone on my team knows.
This is Jeff Winkleman. Without knowing specifically what happened, Joe, it's really hard to tell what they would experience in this case. The design of the network itself is set up that has full redundancy. So if there is a problem on just one side, my suspicion is we're not going to have any experience that the PSAPs would see anything in particular. But we'll have to get clarity on that.
So my question is just if any of the PSAPs are interested, they would know what to look for if they were looking to see if they had any impacts.
So just for like general understanding, if once you start getting around a MOS score of 3.5, you'd start seeing that choppiness as a general kind of voice quality application there, Joseph. So if, looking of around that range is where you start getting that choppiness, and that's kind of what we look at in this report. If packet loss was causing MOS scoring to go down below that threshold, that's where you would start seeing some of that choppiness. Just kind of speaking general terms without seeing the actual artifacts myself, that's kind of a general understanding in MOS. Hopefully that helps a little bit of part of the forensics we need to look at to see, right? If you're down around that range for mean opinion score, then that's when you're going to start seeing some of that choppiness on the end user on one side or the other, right? There's a transmit side and a receive side.
So the PSAPs probably wouldn't have seen any indication of this, you're saying?
Just based on what Tracy reported, if our MOS didn't dip below a 4, then they probably wouldn't even have noticed it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Now, that's just based on what I've heard on this call. I didn't see the artifacts myself.
Thank you,
And
Doug.
we can double check all of that and get back to you guys. Like I said, I submitted a ticket to my group today, well, late last night, and then got it over to Intrado this morning. So we haven't really given them a lot of time to look into it. But it definitely caught our attention. I was sharing with my group. I hadn't seen this particular metric in this chart before. So something did happen on the 29th, and we just need to dig into it and see what it was.
Tracy, when do you expect that we can get a update?
I mean, I can have an update for you guys next week when I send out my weekly updates. I don't know if it's going to be a conclusion, but I know Entrada's on the call right now and she's actively working on it. And I know that my team is as well, because Jeff and I have pulled in a lot of technical resources on our team. So an update within the week, a conclusion, and, you know, an absolute what happened, I don't know. That's
Okay.
definitely out of my technical scope here.
All right, well, we understand. If you could just provide an update next week. And
Absolutely.
if you have an estimated conclusion date, that would be great too.
Okay. I will share everything we find out. Any other questions or things that you want me to ask on this particular item? All right. Thanks, Stephen. Issue trucker. Okay. And this is what I was just mentioning, the weekly update. Steve is sharing it with you guys, so we'll make sure we get that added to this. First one on the list is our PSAP move. I know we are still working with Kimberly on that second circuit. And Jeff, I know that you're actively working to push this through. I don't know that we have a date for Kimberly on this, but I know you have it on your plate.
Right. As of right now, I don't have a date yet. Excuse me. But I'm waiting to get that hopefully today, the actual order number that would associate it with a date. As soon as I get that information, I will send that out to you, Kimberly, as well as Jennifer and Stephen.
So I guess this is where I'm feeling a bit redundant on the update, Jeff, and it's not your fault, Tracy. It's not your fault. I'm not sure whose fault it is, but I don't know how we can get movement forward. We're supposed to have redundant circuits, and as you guys know, that wasn't provided. How it wasn't provided in our building move, whether it was the miss on the order or the miss because of the diverse tariff proceeding, however that we want to slice it. But here we sit in a vulnerable position and we support 50% of all 911 traffic at this demarcation. And we need that diverse circuit. And we just keep getting told month after month, updates coming, updates coming, updates coming. So Jeff, I'm not sure where we need to go from here, how we can escalate this, how we can get movement. I sent you an email this week, I believe, asking some other questions that I had some concerns with. So I don't know if you got eyes on that, but I would love a reply to that as well. But would love to know how I can get some movement forward, get this escalated so we can get closure and we can fix this issue.
Let me get the answers for that email that you had sent out. I did get that. And during this call, if possible, I will find out where the status is for the dates on those orders, the order. I know that there was added confusion because of the Ethernet upgrade that we're going through as well. But let me see what I can get before the end of the call for you.
Okay, and if we can't get some answers, Jeff, who should we escalate this to so we can keep taken bites and move this forward and move it up if we need to. I mean, is there another tier we can go to? We can rattle some cages to try it and get this project a date and get it complete.
I'll reach out if we can't get something more substantive today. I'll reach out to my manager, director, Jim Carlson, as well as the manager for the other group that's working on getting the orders processed through.
Okay, have they not been engaged yet?
They have, just for awareness on it, but at this point, I will see if we can get something else taken care of on this.
Okay. Thanks, Jeff.
All right.
Hey, Jeff, I got a question about that. As you guys figure this out for Lita and next steps, if you could inform the group on the escalation process so everybody can maintain consistency, and when we need to dial it up, whether it's an order or anything, it would be helpful to understand that.
Okay, I can do that.
Awesome. And on this one too, guys, remember it is two parts. We still have that Comcast circuit that is going in. Let me read this. They are still, last time I heard from Comcast, they're still aiming for July. I have a follow-up that is going to come to me by the 15th of this month to let us know how Comcast is progressing on that build and their piece of it. So the snapshot for today doesn't cover like the many months of updates on this one, but we are still working too with our GTT group who has made Comcast the second circuit owner. So just for awareness, that's moving forward also.
Steve, this
Anything
is Jennifer.
else?
Yeah, Jennifer, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say Lumen had provided an escalation sheet to us last year, and I just put that into the chat for anybody who wants to download it.
Thank you.
Let me pull that out too and just take a quick peek, Jennifer, because I think it's right. Did I update? Oh, I can look at it too. Kathy Kendrick should have been updated with Sharon Smith, but I think everything else is accurate.
That's what I was going to check also.
Yeah. Because you still have Jeff and then Jim Carlson, and for myself, Cindy Berry would be available. I do need to make an update to Dan Klein because he's no longer Cindy's escalation point. So I will update this for you guys and send it out today. Hopefully, right after this call, because we do have a couple changes.
Thanks, that'd be great. I will share the most updated version that I have at any time.
Of course. And in fact, we just got a replacement for Dan Klein, so it's not old. You have the latest and greatest, but we just have a replacement come in for his role.
Okay.
Awesome. Okay. I did have a little bit of movement on the next one. This is the state line transfer capabilities. I had a meeting earlier this morning. It was myself, representatives from Cinch, as well as my counterpart in Nebraska. We had thought for a while it was going to be New Mexico and Colorado going first, but looks like it's going to be Nebraska. That one, I don't know what they mean when they say should be fairly simple, but we work with Entrado and it's ESInet to ESInet. So that is progressing forward. I think the Nebraska state line is going to come prior to New Mexico, but that is still moving forward as a Lumen corporate project. Statewide ECATs, again, continuing to work with my counterpart at Entrado. Kayla Wright has been really good about keeping track of, who still needs training. I continue to send reminders monthly to those PSAPs that have not yet connected. I know some locations are having to wait until they can get new equipment, or, everybody has various reasons that they want to wait. I think we're down to 13 PSAPs that do not have this yet, but we'll continue to monitor that and get it installed as quickly as we can based on the PSAP schedule. Is there a question?
I had a question on the transfer across state lines.
Yeah.
With that, is that going to require a tariff change, or can you just put that into effect?
So I'd have to defer to probably Tim Kunkelman. I don't have a huge role in our tariffs. I can tell you in the conversations with Nebraska, that has not come up. but I don't know if it will require a tariff or not. I can follow up.
Thank you.
Let me just make a note here. Pasca. All right. Now the second one on here with ECAP, I apologize, I don't have an answer. I'm not 100% sure if the Pitkin, I know Vale, Entrado was involved. I don't know if that information has been restored or not. And I'm hoping someone from the Pitkin side can maybe speak to that. Or Entrado. Okay, I will circle back with Rich on that one at Entrado. I believe he's out of the office this week, but I'll find out on that one. We have talked a lot a bit about the network performance project. Again, this is two processes on our side, right? Sharon is working diligently to get all of these circuit orders placed and in. We do have a handful of PSAPs that we still need to get a secondary contact for. And that is a requirement for this project. So she's going to continue to work directly with those PSAPs to get a second contact to put on the order. And then we're also working on that last piece, the middle mile portion as well. So this one is moving forward. I'm not sure if you guys have any specific questions on that.
I can give a little more detail if you'd like, Tracy.
Sure.
For what we've got right now, just for awareness more than anything, the first part of this is actually getting the circuits ordered and implemented. And then the next phase of the project will be actually migrating the PSAPs over to that. Excuse me. Right now, we're well over halfway getting the actual circuit orders put into place with installations starting soon. And we will be communicating those through, more than likely, you'll be getting emails and coordination of those efforts for the first part of this from our customer care manager. Her name is Megan. So you should be seeing emails for that. And those are typically system generated emails. And it will talk about the circuits that are going in, order numbers. The initial dates that you'll see on those are going to be the customer commit date is what it's referred to as. And those are typically system generated. And as we've been saying all along, these are completely up to us to be able to go ahead and work with your schedules. So if you have something that's going to be impacting and definitely won't be able to have anybody on site during these installation processes, let us know, work with Megan on that, and we can get those dates changed. Are any questions on that?
Jeff, this is Matt Gage.
Yes.
Do you have a resource where we can double check to ensure that you have primary and secondary contacts provided?
It would be.
You can use me if you want, Jeff, because I know Sharon's busy plugging those circuits in. I can share with you guys who we're still pending primary and secondaries on. Is that what you're asking, Matt?
Yeah, you were mentioning earlier that you're still waiting on some folks to provide.
Tracy, I have those filtered so I can share my screen if needs be on who I'm waiting on secondaries.
No worries. I didn't know you were on the call, Sharon. Sorry.
Oh yeah,
Sure.
no.
And I'm not necessarily looking for it to be displayed to the whole group if folks are uncomfortable with that. I'm more seeking if there's a way we can just double check that for ourselves we've got it covered.
I can send you an email of what I have if that'll work, Matt.
Sure, and I'm open to what the users group prefers.
Okay.
So it sounds like we can do an individual email to those that we're still needing information on, or we can share. That's completely, I agree, up to the PSAP.
Tracy, I was actually going to start calling my main contact because I have main contacts for the PSAP. I was just going to start calling them those and see if I could get the secondary contacts that way.
Does that work, Matt?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anything else on that one? Okay. This meeting request, I think everyone knows it's going to happen after we're finished with our regular calls. So we have the right folks on our side ready to discuss that. The dialable numbers, Andrew, I can't tell if you are on, but this is where Andrew continues to meet weekly with Wesco.
Yeah,
and John's involved.
Yeah, I'm still sending weekly, at least weekly updates. I'm still, it's amazing. Peeling back some layers on our side and waiting on some info from Entrado on this. So I will continue to update at least weekly for this issue.
Okay, thank you very much. I do have an update on the no record found. Stephen had sent this out prior to the meeting and I got some feedback immediately from Alex that I believe this has been resolved. Byron put something in place the week of June 3rd. And since that, they haven't been seeing this issue. So if everyone is okay with it, since we haven't seen any issues since June 3rd, I think this one can be moved to the closed tab. And unless we see it creep up again, which knock on wood, it does not, I don't know that there's anything else to do on this particular line item.
The only thing is Brian still needs to update Gunnison and Delta, which I spoke with him this morning. We just got to get him the tickets to do that. He can't self-generate those anymore.
Okay.
But he thinks, no big deal. He can get them done. So I'll leave that, up to you guys as to whether or not it needs to be on the list. But that's good news that it's done and no issues.
Okay. I think, Andrew, I'll probably leave it on here then until we get Gunnison and Delta fixed, just because I want to make sure to close out the whole thing, not just one side.
So with this confirmed to be affecting multiple PSAPs, just a reminder to everyone else, check to see if it's happening to you as well, especially if you're using Motorola Vesta CHE.
And then the last one there, I think, Andrew, is also tied into your weekly conversations that you're having.
Yeah, the knock is still looking at all these examples. We had David on our call last week to talk about these. It's tough, just from their perspective. He said it's tough to track down because it seems like all the calls disconnect almost right away, that show the issue. But he has a couple leads and still looking into it after our call last week. So it's ongoing.
Okay. Back to the...
Could you explain the issue? I'm not getting it from the description here.
Yeah, I could probably chime in on that. Essentially, it's a issue with some calls coming in with no usable alley. They just generate a 000911000 error code, like an anti-failure code, just to indicate that the caller dialed the trunk line directly. But we've been getting them intermittently for about 2 years, where in many cases it was a caller actually dialing 911, not accidentally dialing a trunk. And they would obviously no alley would come in with it because of the code generated, and they'd be kind of hard to find. And the other nuance is all the ones where we've had connected calls where the dispatcher was able to get more information and process that emergency call. It was out of a specific area, geo-specific area of our dispatch jurisdiction. So a very weird and intermittent and nuanced thing, but still very concerning to us, as this error code seems to be misapplied, since many of these callers weren't dialing the 7-digit trunk and there's no alley. So when they don't get good voice contact and can't confirm that, they can't find them easily. So that is the issue in a nutshell.
Thank you.
Cindy, last month I asked you to update the description for that. Or Tracy, I'm sorry, Tracy.
No, that's okay. And I'm gonna check and see, because yes, you did, and I thought that I did, but.
The super short answer is the ANI code indicates they dialed the trunk number, but in reality, they dialed 911.
Anything more? That was the last one on their list. Questions for Lumen? All right, I'm going to quick summarize. We have a bunch of follow-ups that we're seeking from this group from Lumen. The first one is going to be an update next week on the packet loss. Today, we should hear something, hopefully during the meeting, about Lita's order. Today, Tracy's going to send out the escalation process updated document. We will send that out to the group. Joe had a question about calls across state lines. They're going to follow up on. We need to follow up on the Pitkin County data issue with Rich from Entrado. And then the last one, the description needs to be updated. Did I miss any updates that we're expecting from CenturyLink regarding or to the whole group? All right, hearing nothing else. Next on the agenda is going to be myself, strategic plan. So we unfortunately were 6 votes short with our online vote. And so after talking it over, myself and Kathy and Jennifer, we decided that we need to move past this. So we wanted to start a fresh vote today. So as long as we can get the majority vote, we can pass or fail it. We can move on and get to the next steps. But unfortunately, after Jennifer put a lot of effort into getting votes, we weren't able to get enough. So this is a vote for the strategic plan, accepting it as written. Jennifer's going to send out a poll through this meeting. Thank you. So if you are a voting member and you could please click on that link, I'll give you a minute to place your vote and Jennifer will come back with the tally.
And Steve, while people are voting, I'm just looking at the rest of the agenda and I'd like to go back to the issues tracker. I know Cindy Castile from Grand Junction is on here. And I believe that she's got something that she'd like to add to the issues tracker and bring up to the group. So if you're okay with that while people are voting, would it be all right if Cindy chimed in? I just don't want it to get lost because I know that the rest of the agenda is probably going to take up a lot of the rest of the meeting.
Yeah, please go for it.
And that's Grand Junction, is that correct?
Yeah, Cindy Castile with Grand Junction.
I just want to take notes.
I wasn't sure where to bring it up at. So thank you very much, Jennifer. Here in Grand Junction, we are looking and have gone out and purchased a new 911 phone system. And what we've got going on is contact with Lumen over and over and over for the last few months, trying to find out how we can get this transition moving forward. We did hear that we need to get a project manager, but we have not moved any further than that. We received information on a project manager and a cost for doing this. I'm just wondering why I need a project manager for this.
This is
Jeff,
Jeff.
is this going to be the same as other? Yeah, I was going to say, I think.
Yes, the main reason for the project manager on this is for the coordinated effort between the work that needs to be done with the call handling vendor as well as Entrado, since it is going to be working directly with the ESInet itself.
Okay. Does it have to do with it being a hosted situation or?
Yes, specifically because it is cloud hosted.
So anytime any PSAP wants to change to a hosted system, we are going to need a project manager now.
As it stands right now, yes. The fact that this is a live working network is the other piece of that. We want to make sure that we don't, excuse me, have any interruption of the existing service itself that could potentially affect the other PSAPs. But as it stands right now, it's more than likely going to be a case by case if it is a hosted in the cloud solution.
Okay, and Jeff, can you tell me why we're, in June and we started these communications with you, I want to say back in November, December time. Why I'm still waiting for responses back. I'm still waiting for a project manager. I'm still waiting for response back to to all of this. Why am I still here in June with no solution to this?
We're working through the technical questions that have come back on that. There wasn't anything we had anticipated, so I've got to pull in additional resources to get those answers, and that's what I've been working on.
Okay, so again, though, do I have a date? Do I have anything? I know you have a phone call possibly next week. We've been waiting, and I don't think it's right that I should wait for a new 911 phone system for all of this to happen. It should be moving. It should have been moving, and I just don't understand.
I agree, Cindy, and that's what we're working on to make sure that we can get this resolved as quick as possible. But right now, the additional resources is what I'm waiting on to be able to get the answers that I need. And like I said, we potentially have a call set up for next week. So I've got to see what we have for a response on that. At that point, we should be able to wrap everything up.
Okay. So can we put it on the tracker so that, I realize it just affects Grand Junction, but this could affect other PSAPs within the state that are going to be in the same situation that I'm in, that are obviously going to need a project manager and don't even realize they're going to need one. And then the cost. And
right.
I don't think that's expected by any other PSAP, the cost that you're charging for this project manager.
The other ones that we've been working with, specifically, we are going through that process currently. So
okay.
It has been identified, and moving forward, that's one of the biggest things that we're trying to clear up and get taken care of.
Okay.
Cindy, to follow up, I absolutely can add this to the tracker for you. That's no problem at all. I will summarize what you said, and I'll get with Jeff just to get some more specifics on it and get it put on the tracker for you.
I appreciate that. It really needs to move forward. This is crazy. I wanted this done in first quarter. My busiest time, of course, is during the summer, just like every other PSAP out there. And I'm now looking till the fall before, and it just is unacceptable.
Cindy, thanks for bringing that forward. If I could add for the issue tracker, if CenturyLink could provide documentation on what the trigger points that would require a project manager, so that everybody across the state understands that. I know, Jeff, you've just verbalized that to the group. So if you could do that. And then we've got a couple hands raised. Kimberly?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. And so I'm really confused by this. And so, Cindy, I really appreciate you bringing this forward for the group. And I'm confused for the answer that's given. And I think we need more discussion and clarity around it. And I'm not a tariff expert, so I guess I would call to what provision in the tariff allows CenturyLink to charge a 911 authority for project management fees and change fees when a 911 authority changes a CPE. So Jeff, as you're doing your research and you're citing this, if you can cite back to that specific provision within the tariff or in the rules where that's going to be applied, because I know we changed a CPE up in Jackson County and we weren't charged. So we wouldn't want one authority to be charged in this state just based on their preference of a vendor, because that can be not equally applied, right? And we wouldn't want that unfair treatment across the state. So I know we weren't historically charged in Jackson County when I changed CPE providers. So and that was going from a standalone to a host node environment. So I'm confused on the project management answer you gave, and I'm also confused on what tariff provision and what that rate is going to be. So we have that and we can all know, plan it, and also understand when you're going to exercise that as the BES in Colorado.
Kimberly, was that change for the call handling, was that hosted in the cloud, or was it, just the universe to your network there?
Yeah, it was not hosted in the cloud. We went from a cloud solution actually to an on-prem solution. So it was a different solution that we implemented there and we moved away from. So a little bit of a reverse still though.
Right.
That's where I just think we need a backstop, right? We need to know your backstop of what you're using to make this, because I can't recall anything in the tariff or the rules that specifically say, hey, if you're going to go to a cloud solution, therefore this project management fee, therefore this hourly rate is going to be applied.
Right. As far as I'm aware, there isn't anything listed, and I'll double check with Tim on this, or Tressa. I don't think there's anything listed in the tariff specifically around call handling itself, and that's specifically what this is dealing with. But I will get the details and I'll send something out on that.
Yeah, and then if it's not listed, I don't know if you can charge it. And I would say that that is, I guess we would look at our legal counsel and the team and ultimately the PUC to say if that is an authorized expense. So
Kimberly, I think I would first ask, is this project management service regulated as an on-tariff item or if it's an off-tariff item as part of the discussion?
yeah, I'm pretty sure this is all about the BES handoff for 911, nothing about CPE, but Cindy can speak to that.
All right, we've got a few more questions going on. Andrew, you've been patient. Thank you.
I am similarly confused, Jeff. You said that it was some technical specifications that you had to work through, which is why you need additional resources, which is why Grand Junction's project is taking so long. Are these technical specifications so completely different from the deployment at JeffCom that is what is causing this delay? Because you guys have been through this once already, and we're about 30 days behind Grand Junction in our request. So I'm, ostensibly 30 days away from making the same speech that Grand Junction just made in this meeting. So can you elucidate a little bit on that? And while you're at it, we have compared notes, and the amount that you're charging Grand Junction for a project manager is about 50% more than what you charge JeffCom. So is there kind of a discrepancy there? Is it the complexity of the work? We have not yet received our quote for the project manager, so I'm a little nervous as to what to expect. But this just feels kind of haphazard, and I think there's been a lack of understanding on certainly my part, Grand Junction's part, from talking to JeffCom on their part. So any other detail you can provide as to the details around this would be great.
Sure. I'm not sure which quote you're speaking of for JeffCom because there wasn't one. There were a lot of costs with that particular project that were eaten by Lumen CenturyLink. And that's where a lot of this has been identified. So I'm not sure where that particular quote was. But the biggest piece that we're working on right now is the actual scope of work that's going to be coming from Intrado and the work that they're going to be doing to be able to include the detailed specification on that. And from what I found out, we should hopefully have that back tomorrow from Rich Johnson. He is out of the office today, so we should have that completed tomorrow. But again, I'm not sure what the quote you were speaking to for JeffCom.
It was the quote for the project manager. They confirmed that you charged them for a project manager.
I'll have to go back and look and see. I don't recall that.
So Jeff, we could look at that, and I don't know if we can ask JeffCom, because I recall the situation being similar where that we, Lumen at the time, did not charge JeffCom for a PM, but I don't always see the quotes, so I can help you follow up on that.
Thank you.
All right, sounds like there's some follow-up that needs to happen there, and for CenturyLink to get back to us with their expected consistency as we go from PSAP or authority to authority if there's changes to the equipment. Daryl, you have your hand up. Daryl, you there?
Muted.
All right, Daryl, we'll come back to you. I'm not sure if we lost you. Joe, you got your hand up?
As a common carrier, essentially can't be discriminating between customers. And as Kimberly was saying, any charges have to be reflected in the tariff, or there has to be a reason why they wouldn't have to be tariffed, but that doesn't strike me offhand.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Daryl, you there?
Can you hear me now?
I can. Go for it.
Okay. Love these microphones. So I'm going to start by prefacing this, saying that this is my personal opinion, not the opinion of the commission, but I agree with Kimberly that based on the description of this, it sounds like this is basic emergency service, delivering the call to the PSAP in a way that the PSAP can receive it. In addition to that, there's no other company that can do this. You know, Grand Junction can't go out and find another project manager to do this work for them, which makes them a captive customer for this service, which they have to have in order to use their preferred phone system with the basic emergency service product. So my personal opinion is that yes, this should be tariffed. There should be a amount listed per hour of project management work in the tariff that everybody pays, so that you can't just charge whatever you think the local governing body is willing or able to pay. And then there needs to be, you know, estimates provided to the governing bodies as to how many hours of project management each of these will require. That being said, you know, the commission may not agree with my opinion on this, but if there were to be a formal complaint or a petition for declaratory order to come before the commission, then the commission would make that decision.
Thanks, Daryl. Carl?
Yeah, thank you, Cindy, for bringing this forward. And so on some of these, should we start adding a tracker like Andrew as soon as he gets some dates or can't get dates, or like Kimberly can't get her second connection because it seems like we're having some issues like this? Should we start adding these tracking issues sooner?
If I have a say in that, I usually keep track of the tracker for you guys and send it out. So absolutely. And I've asked in the past if you guys have things that come up. You know, I'm not a part of every single project that happens in Colorado, but I certainly would like to get them on the tracker for you so that, I mean, we all get busy, and it's not that each issue isn't important, but it's easy to forget. And if this tracker has to be, you know, 3 times as big as it is, I think it would be helpful for me to escalate internally if I need to and follow up on these if I know what they are ahead of time. And if it's a different group that should be tracking it, that's fine too. If someone at Lumen feels like it should be going elsewhere, I'm happy to do it, but I certainly don't have to.
Real quick, Matt, before you go. So Carl, I appreciate your request. Let me throw an idea out there. If an authority or PSAP that is dealing with an issue with Lumen needs to escalate it beyond what their normal process is, hence the document we'll send out later, should then it come to this group for awareness?
I mean, I think that's good, but I think me along maybe with everybody else is getting frustrated that, you know, Cindy has dealt with this for how many months, as well as Kimberly's dealt with this for quite a, you know, her issue for quite a long time.
Yeah, I agree. We just continue to we'll follow up on this as the answer. So I don't know if Tracy and Jeff can figure out a way to be able to get back to this group with definitive answers versus just kicking the can down the road from month to month.
Yes, I will work with Tracy on that.
Matt.
Yeah, where I was going to go with that is I don't notice this so much as a issue tracker, more as like a customer service type of situation. I don't know if we need like a customer service tracker or something to that effect. That's all I was going to say to that.
Maybe a subsection of the issue tracker for customer service related topics.
Yep, exactly.
But we still go through them each month. There's just a unique category for it because you're right. This is about providing expected service. Jennifer?
Well, I would look at that issue tracker and say that the vast majority of the issues on it are related to customer service and very little to do with actual technical issues. And the issues tracker was built partially to hold CenturyLink accountable to fixing the issues that we brought up. And as Carl alluded to, the customer service issue that Lumen continues to display is the problem. And all of these have a common theme of Lumen or CenturyLink being unresponsive to customer concerns. And these issues are going on way too long. And I understand that Lumen as a customer service provider in terms of CPE or other things that are outside of the tariff, that's not regulated by the tariff necessarily, but that does not mean that there are no options for holding CenturyLink accountable to providing a basic level of customer service to a constituency that, as Daryl pointed out, has no other option to turn to, which in my view increases your responsibility to provide good customer service, not decreases it. I've been looking at the tariff and there is terminology about what is the customer's responsibility and what CenturyLink's responsibility is. There's also information in there about project management rates, but I need to review it further, but it's my understanding that that may actually apply not necessarily to general project management, but to the initiation and migration to the ESInet. So Daryl and I continue to look at the tariff to find if there's specific information on this particular issue. I'm not sure that there is, but we'll continue to look. And as Daryl said, there are steps that agencies can take to address this issue.
Andrew?
Sorry, I couldn't find the mute button. Toward that end, before I had the escalation chart, I reached out to a senior executive within Lumen who just happens to be a Denver resident, and was then subsequently able to loop in Jim Carlson. Jim has committed to coming in person to the July task force meeting. I can't remember if I've provided this information to everybody, but at least in emails with me and Jennifer, he is committed to doing that. So at the very least, it will be an opportunity for us to kind of share our thoughts and feelings with him. And so, let's take advantage of that. So anybody who maybe isn't planning on being in Rifle in July, it'll be a good opportunity to kind of interface with Jim.
Thanks for that info. Jeff, Tracy, do you have anything to respond?
At this point, no. Like I said, I will get with Tracy and circle back on all the issues that have been brought up on this, and we'll get a response out.
All right, in the meantime, let's add the issues that have been brought up to the issue tracker. Thanks, Jennifer, for pointing out that a lot of these are customer service related. We probably don't need an extra category, but they are things that we need to make sure there's awareness across this entire group. And then we'll have an opportunity for some face-to-face in July. Does anybody else have any comments, concerns, questions? All right, I'm going to go back to in the chat. Jennifer put in there that there's 28 authorities present on the call, but only 12 votes so far. Please vote if you have that representation for your authority. Jennifer, do we have a status, or do we need to let this go through till the end of the meeting and keep reminding people to vote?
Well, we only need one more vote to have a majority. So if you are representing 911 in any capacity, or you're representing your 911 authority and you haven't voted yet, I just need one more. So
All right. Thank you, Jennifer. We'll check back in with you as we get closer to the end of the meeting.
stay tuned.
And you're up next for number 6 on the agenda.
Great. Sorry, I had another vote come in and I just wanted to make sure that it was unique, and it is. And so we have passed the strategic plan.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jennifer and Kathy and everybody for all their efforts and those that worked on this tirelessly last year. It took a while to get to this point, but it is very much appreciated.
Absolutely. Okay, this is a quick agenda item. The National Association of State 911 Administrators frequently gets asked for their input on a variety of things. And one of the things that we're looking for they're looking for input right now is the FCC is contemplating dropping the requirement that text to, or not text to 911, TTY, connect to ASCII, ASCII, and they're wanting to know if dropping that requirement would affect PSAPs in any way or affect your PSAP equipment. So I thought the easiest way to gather this information would just be to ask those in 911 operations, would you have an issue if the requirement to connect to ASCII was dropped for TTY, or if that would affect your PSAP equipment? Daryl, go ahead.
I just want to add to this that I did talk to the TRS administrator for the state, who works for me for one more day until her program gets moved over to CDHS. And she said that based on the data she gets from the state's TRS provider, it does not look like there are any users in the state still using ASCII-based TTY devices. So that tells me that at least from the user side, it's no longer needed, but that doesn't necessarily tell me whether or not you need it at your PSAP.
There are a lot of PSAPs that aren't represented on this call, I think, so we may need to reach out other than just through the meeting.
Yeah, I can do that too. I just wanted to have a quick question here. All right, that's all I had for that. Steve, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks. I've got a quick one also. So Boulder County has encountered a couple erroneous Apple SOS through satellite calls. We have 2 confirmed and possibly a third from about April timeframe. The last week after our Pearl Street terror attack, the next day we received a Apple SOS through satellite that said, all it said was person on fire. It came from a very remote area of our county. As you know, we have a lot of mountainous areas that don't have cellular coverage. Potentially and likely a coincidence and unrelated to what had happened last Sunday. But it was obviously very concerning and real fresh in everybody's minds, and generated a big response. We dove into it, couldn't find out. We actually got a hold of the person. It all ended up being fine and nobody was on fire. And then a few days later, we got another one from a different area. Same thing, person on fire. I'm in direct contact with Apple. I have a open issue with them. They're asking for good information and willing to come to the table to try to investigate it because they've never had this happen. My request to the group is, has anybody had any erroneous Apple satellite SOS calls? And if you have, if you could reach out to me outside of the meeting, I just have a handful of questions to gather some information about the specifics. Does anybody right off the bat say, oh yeah, that's happened to us recently?
Steve, when you say erroneous, do you mean the person didn't send it, who you tracked down the
Yes.
phone to?
Yeah. Thanks for the clarifying question, Joe. So yes, so they're erroneous because the first person, the phone was in their backpack, and they heard it dinging and binging and pulled it out, and it was our staff obviously trying to reach back out to ask questions through our phone system. So the second one, it was in the woman's pocket who was hiking. So when I call it erroneous, it's truly, I've been in touch with the person who got, or whose phone made the call and they did not touch it or activate it to do so. All right, if you have any of those or examples or people I should talk to, please let me know. It would be very helpful as we kind of dive into this with Apple.
So with Apple, is it possible that their phone number was being spoofed?
Not likely, because interesting thought, but not likely because it has to go, the coordinates we got of the phone, from the phone through the Apple satellite SOS message matched where the person was located. We were able to find them through search and rescue groups as they came to their car after their hike or on the trail itself. So there's no evidence to spoofing might be a part of this. But that's an interesting question. Thanks, Joe. So if anybody has any more information, feel free to reach out to me offline. Number 8 on the agenda, Daryl.
So I have a hard stop at 11:30, but I think I can get through this. I will go ahead and get started. So basically, I wanted to provide, are you guys seeing my screen?
Yes, thank you.
I wanted to provide sort of an overview of my understanding of the phase 1 and phase 2 NG911 transition order from the FCC. To say we're all on the same page is not quite the right way to phrase it, because I know that we can still have disagreements on the interpretation of it, but I want to make sure that we're not disagreeing on basic facts. For a lot of you, this will be very much a review of what you already know, but I wanted to make sure that everybody has the same level of background before we discuss further actions to take place. So I wanted to start by just talking a little bit about our current status, the current configuration of the ESInet and the NG911 network, what phase 1 and phase 2 would do under the FCC's orders, and what action items I see us needing to take to move forward. So in background, in 2021, FCC personnel from the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau invited NASNA, which is the National Association of State 911 Administrators, to file a letter with the FCC urging them to take action to expedite NG911 implementation among the originating service providers. This letter was filed in October of 2021, and it proposed a two-phased approach requiring OSPs to cooperate with NG911 implementations by delivering calls to ESInets first in SIP format, transitioning away from TDM or time division multiplexing, then in a NENA I3 compliant format, which would include location information attached to the call using PIDAFlow. In June 2023, the FCC adopted a notice of proposed rulemaking that generally followed the recommendations of NASNA's letter with additional detail to how it would be implemented. In July of 2024, the FCC adopted final rules implementing the proposed changes. There were some additional delays to the effective date of some of the rules while they underwent approval from the Office of Management and Budget. Then in March of 2025, the FCC published a form that 911 authorities, and we'll talk about what they mean when they say 911 authorities, may use to file valid phase 1 and 2 requests with the FCC, which the OSPs are required to honor. Alternatively, 911 authorities may submit requests directly to the OSPs individually, although this is not recommended because you are more than likely to miss some OSPs if you do it that way, rather than just filing with the commission, in which case all OSPs are required to honor those certifications. So first, I want to talk about where we are right now. So this is the current ESInet configuration with, on the left-hand side, you have the TDMs or the TDM OSPs. These are OSPs that are still using legacy TDM networks, and they are delivering 911 calls to a BESB provided TDM aggregation point. And what CenturyLink is doing at that point is converting the call to SIP, Session Initiation Protocol, which it stays in SIP format all the way to the PSAP. If the PSAP is not able to receive calls in SIP, then it's converted back to TDM at that last step. We also have some OSPs that have SIP-based networks, but they're still delivering their calls to these TDM aggregation points. So they're actually converting their calls from SIP to TDM so it can be delivered to the aggregation point where it's being converted back into SIP. And then, of course, if it's going to a PSAP that can't take SIP, then you have that additional transition at the end to turn it back into TDM. That's sort of the situation that this phase one transition is trying to get rid of, so that there's not all of these unnecessary conversions back and forth between TDM and SIP. Additionally, in talking to CenturyLink, I've been told that there are some OSPs that are already delivering calls in SIP format to a SIP aggregation point that is being provided by CenturyLink, in which case there is no translation required. One thing to note is that because the call is being delivered in SIP, but there's no location information attached to the call, you still have to have an ALI database, and there still has to be a separate ALI query that takes place after the call is received at the PSAP, as opposed to a full next-gen 911 deployment, in which case the location information is attached to the call. So what does the phase one transition do? One thing I want to point out is that absolutely nothing on the right-hand side of this diagram has changed. So if you compare from here to here, nothing has changed on the right-hand side. All the changes are on the left-hand side, which is the aggregation or ingress to the ESInet. So the change is that you may have some OSPs that are still have TDM-based networks, but they are now responsible for converting their traffic to SIP before delivering it to a SIP aggregation point. And then the legacy aggregation point is retired. So there will only be one type of aggregation point, that is a SIP aggregation point. Those SIP OSPs can start delivering their calls directly to that SIP aggregation point. So it eliminates one unnecessary translation of the call from SIP to TDM and then back to SIP again. That is the extent of what happens here. And I don't want to say it's simple, because it's certainly not simple on the OSP side, but the PSAPs should see absolutely no change. And it should require no change on the PSAP side, because calls are already being delivered to the PSAPs in SIP format. And these legacy PSAP gateways that are being used for the non-SIP capable PSAPs can stay in place. Those don't have to go away. All phase one does is change how the calls are coming in from the OSPs and eliminating that legacy network gateway that converts TDM to SIP. So the process for phase one will begin with planning, and there are certain things that CenturyLink will need to do before we can move forward. First, it needs to determine when it wants to convert the OSPs to SIP. The FCC rule sets 6 months as the default timeline for all OSPs to comply with requests for certification to implement phase one. However, it is more likely that CenturyLink will want to convert the OSPs one at a time or in groups. So to that end, we need CenturyLink to establish a timeline for the conversion for each OSP. CenturyLink also needs to propose where it wants those SIP aggregation points to exist. The FCC rules require that the 911 authority identify where the aggregation points will be, but this really needs to be something that's negotiated with the BESPs, because it is the BESP that will have to provide that aggregation point. So this is a negotiation between the PUC, the customers, which are all the governing bodies and PSAPs, and CenturyLink as to where it wants those aggregation points to be. And this can go several different ways. There can be new aggregation points for where CenturyLink will collect those calls or aggregate those calls in SIP format. Potentially, the physical location could be the same as the existing ones, in which case they're not designating new aggregation points. They're just converting them to be direct SIP aggregation points. If they are new, then we need to know where they're going to be. And rules require that at least one in-state aggregation point exist, although there can also be out-of-state aggregation points, which may be particularly beneficial for the national originating service providers, as opposed to the regional or state-based originating service providers. And it doesn't have to be limited to 2 as well. That's what the FCC rules require as a minimum, but there can be more than just 2 aggregation points. And then CenturyLink is going to need to update its tariff to reflect the new aggregation points if changed, and the fact that it offers direct SIP aggregation for OSPs. And this has a cited benefit to it in that filing a tariff to reflect CenturyLink's proposed plans for phase one implementation will also give the governing bodies, PUC staff, and potentially even the OSPs, if they have something to say about it, a process and an opportunity for providing input and negotiation with the company regarding the details. Because as we know, almost all 911 or basic emergency service tariffs are protested and therefore go into a tariff proceeding that can be negotiated. Just a little more reasoning as to why a tariff filing is required. The tariff, as it is written now, has as its network design the inclusion of these legacy network gateways as well as legacy selective routers, and it shows that the legacy network gateways are being used for all calls. At the conclusion of phase one, there won't be legacy network gateways anymore. They will simply be SIP aggregation points. They might be at the same locations as the selective the legacy selective routers, but they may not be. So that's what needs to be updated in the tariff to reflect that new arrangement, as well as the locations and the fact that calls will be received from the originating service providers in direct SIP format. Once the determination is made as to where the SIP aggregation points will be and the tariff has been updated, a schedule has been established for conversion of the OSPs to the new aggregation points, and the aggregation points themselves are established and ready to receive traffic, then and only then should a 911 authority file a certification with the FCC stating that it is ready to receive traffic into the ESInet in SIP format. Now, 911 authority has a specific meaning in the FCC's rules. It means a state, territorial, regional, tribal, or local government entity that, and I added the emphasis here, that operates or has administrative authority over all or any aspect of a communications network for the receipt of 911 traffic at NG 911 delivery points and for the transmission of such traffic from that point to the PSAPs. Now, I'll say that in Colorado, the network itself is operated by the BESP, but the BESP can't be the 911 authority because it's not a governmental entity. The only governmental entity in Colorado with administrative authority over the network from the aggregation point to the demarcation points is the PUC, which has jurisdictional authority over basic emergency service, which is what they're essentially what they're describing in that from the aggregation point to the demarcation point with the PSAPs. I do acknowledge that this is Commission staff's interpretation of the FCC rules, and we are aware that some local agencies may disagree with that interpretation. If a governing body chooses to file a certification with the FCC directly or submit a request to OSPs directly, I do believe that it is very likely to be contested by the OSPs because they're not going to want that confusion of not knowing how to deliver calls to the ESInet based on the certification of one or a subset of PSAPs in the state. And it could also be contested by the BESP and the PUC itself. And this will slow down the process further and create a great deal of confusion. So PUC staff requests that individual governing bodies do not file their own certifications or send their own requests and allow commission staff to do it after the tariff process and after everything else is in place. Following certification with the FCC, CenturyLink will coordinate with the OSPs to implement the conversion. And I would request that CenturyLink report regularly to the ESInet users group regarding the progress of the project. If necessary, the commission could issue a decision requiring regular filings to report on the company's progress and what obstacles may arise, but just simply reporting to the users group may be sufficient. That is phase one. Before I go on to phase two, because I know I've had a lot of caffeine and I've got a time limit here, so I'm going really fast, but I do want to ask if anybody has any questions. Oh, I see some hands up.
Yeah. We got two, Daryl. Joe?
Yeah, I'll try to be real quick. During the EUG, the special meeting we had, I misspoke when I said that the requesting authorities had to certify that they were able to use the, take and use the new format. That's from all the other rules. I don't know why I transposed that to here, but they are required to certify that their CPE vendors are available if necessary to, testing and confirmation of everything's working. And it's actually a question for CenturyLink of, do we need that with everybody currently getting SIP through the network? I'm a little confused by their, having to have a project manager and all for Grand Junction, if there's any reason that would change. Well, and maybe they can answer another time. And the other thing is,
I'm
I hope
happy
we could-
to provide an answer, Spinkert. The question is more related to whether the CPE, just for clarity. I mean, Daryl did a fairly good job in that description, how anything on the left side of that diagram doesn't really need to be affected or changed for phase one. And that's what we're talking about here, right, is phase one. For phase two, there are enhancements that do have to be made to each and every PSAP to accept I3 end to end. So I would say, I don't want to put a caveat in the question, but for phase one, nothing needs to change at your PSAP.
Great. And my other comment was that I think it'd be preferable to avoid a tariff protest, if we could review the proposed tariff changes and discuss with CenturyLink and see if we can resolve any concerns that anybody might have. That might be a preferable way to go and to get where we want to be quicker. Thanks.
Thanks, Joe. Kimberly?
Yeah, Daryl, probably not for now, because I know you're limited on time, but on the other slide, when you were talking about, and what we used to call like that core of the network on those in between the old purple lines that the PUC regulates, where you were saying that we don't have, 911 authorities don't have authority. The only jurisdiction that has authority in that core of the network is the PUC. I think what would be really helpful then is when we have performance issues like we've been talking about, how the PUC staff position is, hey, then 911 authorities, you need to file a complaint when there's core performance issues inside those purple lines, where in order to right the wrong or correct those issues, it requires us to file a complaint. So when we're talking about these phases and where jurisdiction and authority lies and performance issues lie, I would love for you to kind of put maybe on a part of this configuration and this migration of the whole network, when we talk about authority and performance and oversight, how that fits in, because performance is critical as we migrate and as we transition and as the health of the network continues. So I think that piece has to be fit into this. The 911 authorities are on the far side of all of this, but when we have problems, they really are in that core. It's in that piece of it, and we can tell that by that issue tracker. But if our voice is limited and it's really the PUC's authority in that area, but it requires us on the right side to file complaints, formal or informal, when we have performance issues, that's where I think we start to have some concerns. So maybe for a later conversation, or as this migration and conversations continue with PUC staff, maybe we can fold some of that in there.
Thank you, Kimberly. And, this is a much longer conversation, I think, but I'll just say that typically, and this isn't just for 911, this is for all of the industries that the commission regulates. If there are problems that manifest on the customer side, we need that information from the customer side in order to act, even though we are the ones that have the authority to regulate that middle portion. We can't operate without the information on the record necessary to act. So that is one point I would make there, but you are correct that is probably a much longer conversation than we have time for. Does anybody have any other questions on phase one? Phase two describes the conversion to OSPs delivering calls in NINA I3 format. And this is a much bigger change than from the TDM to SIP, because it requires the development of location information servers by the OSPs, either doing it directly or using a contractor, and delivering calls in I3 format to PSAPs, some of whom may not be ready to receive them yet. And if they're not ready to receive calls in I3 format, it may not be as easy as converting SIP back to TDM. So phase 1 and phase 2 technically can be requested at the same time under the FCC's rules, which would essentially force the OSPs to skip phase 1 and go directly to phase 2. However, we do not recommend it because the conversion from TDM to SIP is a much easier process from the PSAP side. We believe that would be a good test run before doing phase 2. So here's the ideal configuration. If all of the PSAPs in the state were NINA I3 capable, then you would have a much simpler view on the right-hand side than what you're going to end up with if all of the PSAPs are not I3 capable. And essentially how this would work is you would still have some TDM OSPs, but again, they're now responsible for converting their traffic to SIP, but they're also now responsible for having their own location information server, which will create that PITA flow header attached to the calls. And then the BESP will provide a SIP aggregation point with no legacy network gateway, like they were at the end of phase 1. But the difference here is that they're now delivering calls through the network in NINA I3 format, not just SIP format, and delivering those calls to the NINA I3 PSAPs in that NINA I3 format. And those PSAPs or those OSPs that are already in SIP, again, they will have to set up their own location information servers, attach that location information, and deliver their calls in NINA I3 format to the BESP. However, we know that it's very unlikely that all PSAPs in Colorado will become ready to receive calls in NINA I3 format in a foreseeable time period, simply because of the fact that every PSAP gets to choose its own CPE, it gets to choose its own CHE, and we can't force any PSAP, nor do we seek to do so, to convert their PSAP to being able to receive calls in NINA I3 format. So where does that leave us? There are a couple of possible configurations that I would ask CenturyLink to look at and let us know if they can investigate these possible configurations and tell us if they can support them. One is that calls could be received from all of the OSPs in NINA I3 format, but if there's some way that CenturyLink can convert those calls back to TDM for the legacy PSAPs, and we would actually have 3 different categories of PSAPs. There would be PSAPs that are TDM only, in which case the NINA I3 conversion will have to turn those calls back to TDM for those PSAPs, just like we do now with the legacy PSAP gateways. We may have some PSAPs that are ready to receive calls in SIP format, but not NINA I3 format, in which case the NINA I3 format calls will have to be converted to SIP, which would strip the PITA flow and other I3 formatting and then deliver the call to the PSAP. In both of those cases, there's going to have to be some way for those PSAPs to receive legacy ALI through ALI queries, just like they do now. And then those PSAPs that are able to receive calls in NINA I3 format will be able to receive those calls directly in NINA I3 format with no conversion. So that is one method, and the difference here is that the OSPs will all be converting and delivering all calls in NINA I3 format, and the conversion takes place on the right-hand side of the diagram for those PSAPs that are not yet ready to receive those calls in NINA I3 format. Alternatively, we could potentially ask the OSPs or require the OSPs to deliver calls either in SIP format for those PSAPs that are not able to receive calls in NINA I3 format, or in NINA I3 format for those PSAPs that are able to receive calls in NINA I3 format. And this will be more complicated on the OSP side, because what it means is that the OSPs will have to deliver calls to one of 2 different aggregation points, depending on which PSAP they're delivering that call to. And on the right-hand side, we have essentially the same thing, where we have legacy TDM only PSAPs, we have SIP ready, but not NG911 ready PSAPs, and we have NINA I3 ready PSAPs. So those are the 2 possible configurations that I was able to come up with, but I am not a network engineer. So these are the questions that CenturyLink will need to explore and provide proposals to the ESInet users group about. And there may be other configurations that I did not think of. There's also the possibility that we don't do phase 2 at all until every PSAP in the state is NENA I3 ready. But that could be a very long time. And I know that there are PSAPs that probably don't want to wait until every PSAP in the state is NENA I3 ready. So what we need is we need CenturyLink to let us know what they are capable of doing. In the meantime, there is prep work that can be done. PSAPs need to make sure that if they purchase a new phone system, they are purchasing one that is NENA I3 compliant. That is easier said than done because there is currently, although there is work being done at the federal level to do this, but there is currently no independent certification body that says, yes, this phone system is NENA I3 compliant. So it is up to the phone provider to say that they are NENA I3 compliant, and it is up to the PSAP or governing body that's purchasing the call handling equipment to do their due diligence to see if they believe the claim of the provider that they are NENA I3 compliant. Things you can do is ask them what NENA I3 compliant ESInets they have already deployed in. If they have deployed in any other state in a NENA I3 compliant network, that would be a good clue, but that is going to be up to each PSAP to do their due diligence on. And they can start work with their current CHE provider to ensure that the PSAP understands what is necessary for it to begin receiving calls in NENA I3 format, which could include configuration changes or purchases of additional modules from the CHE provider. And they could continue building and preparing their GIS data, which will be necessary for geospatial routing in a full next-gen 911 I3 environment. So to sum up, there's some action items here for phase 1, which are to propose that CenturyLink needs to propose a schedule for migrating the OSPs to SIP format, either individually or in groups. CenturyLink needs to propose locations for the SIP aggregation points. Whether or not those are different from the legacy aggregation points, CenturyLink needs to file an amendment to the basic emergency service tariff to reflect these changes. PUC staff, once everything else is in place, needs to file a certification with the FCC requesting phase 1 next-gen 911 service, and CenturyLink needs to work with all of the OSPs to effect the transition and report regularly to the ESInet users group on the progress of the transition. Phase 2 is, as you can see, a lot more complicated. CenturyLink needs to explore and discuss with the ESInet users group different options, including the pros and cons for how to implement phase 2, even though not all PSAPs may be ready to accept calls in NENA I3 format. The recommendation may simply be that CenturyLink recommends not doing it until every PSAP is ready for NENA I3 format. However, I do think that there are a couple of possible configurations that CenturyLink should at least look into and tell us what they think about the feasibility of those configurations that would allow PSAPs to accept calls in NENA I3 format before every PSAP in the state is ready. CenturyLink will need to develop a list of, we would ask CenturyLink rather to develop a list of questions and considerations that governing bodies and PSAPs could use for their discussions with their CHE providers to ensure that they understand their own readiness. CenturyLink and the ESInet users group will need to collaboratively discuss the options and decide on a path. CenturyLink will need to file a new tariff if changes are needed to that tariff to implement the chosen path above. And PUC staff, once the path has been agreed to between CenturyLink and the ESInet users group, then it will be up to PUC staff to file those certifications with the FCC. If it is being done on a PSAP by PSAP basis, that can be done through those certifications by designating which PSAPs will be, we are requesting phase 2 implementation for and which ones we are not. And because the implementation of phase 2 is more complicated, CenturyLink will need to work with each PSAP to ensure that it is correctly receiving calls in I3 format. This will likely require a great deal of coordination and troubleshooting given the array of different CHE vendors we have in the state and the configurations in the state. And finally, CenturyLink will need to report regularly to the ESInet users group on its progress with both the OSP migration and the PSAP migration. With that, unfortunately, like I said, I have a hard stop at 11:30, so I'm going to have to leave, unfortunately. But I was my understanding, too, that the ESInet users group was going to schedule a follow-up special meeting to discuss this. So if you plan on doing that, we can continue this discussion.
Thank you, Daryl. Appreciate the presentation, and we will get back to you since you have a hard stop, because I think that's the next thing on the agenda for talking about the rescheduling of the special meeting. Jennifer, you want to pull up the meeting agenda, just make sure, because we're towards the end of our time or at the end of our time. I want to make sure we get to that. So next steps, when we first met for the special meeting a few weeks ago, it was determined that the content of the presentation from CenturyLink was not what the ESInet user groups had asked for. Quick kick over to Jeff or Tracy. At what point is CenturyLink going to be prepared, and Intrado is kind of a combination from both, to represent the information?
This, excuse me, this is Jeff. I don't have an answer to that. And I think Tracy got pulled for another call. Is Doug still on here by chance? Doug Cunningham? I don't see that he stayed on. He was going.
Doug had to jump, so.
Okay.
I'm happy to work with Doug, but I haven't been a part of the presentation or technical answers, if you will.
Okay, so it sounds like we need some information on how long CenturyLink needs, when you'll be ready to present. And I think we can take what Daryl presented and craft probably a pretty lengthy conversation. So Jeff, can you get back to us as soon as possible on when CenturyLink will be ready to represent that information?
Yes.
I'll do that for you, Jeff.
Thank you, Tracy.
Yep, I got you.
Thanks, Tracy.
I'll get you some dates before the end of this week.
Okay, sounds good. Send them to Jennifer and I, and then we will look at scheduling that meeting or that special meeting. Any public comment?
Steve, this is Jennifer.
Yes.
I just would like to say that I also find CenturyLink's inability to come to this meeting prepared to set a date for a follow-up meeting completely unacceptable, because the day after the last special meeting, we had a small group meeting, which Steve sent out an overview of to the ESInet users group. And CenturyLink was aware at that time that we were going to come to this meeting today and set a date for the rescheduled special meeting. And I find it extremely disrespectful on CenturyLink's part that you are not ready to set a date at this meeting as we talked about.
Jennifer, we did have a resource on it. It was Doug Cunningham, and unfortunately he had to drop for another call due to a hard stop. So
yeah, well, we're 3 minutes past, and if he couldn't have passed it on to one of you who's still on the call, I find that unacceptable. How many times is CenturyLink going to ask us to wait for stuff that we have given plenty of notice for and asked for?
I apologize, but I don't know what to say at this point. I'll work with Tracy on this and get this resolved.
Thank you.
So we will have dates by the end of this week. The hard part is then reaching out to with all the people on the call. It's easy to get availability. So we'll put our heads together to figure out how to solve that, to make sure it can be well attended, to get the accurate information presented to the ESInet user group.
Steve, I can send out a doodle poll when we get those dates.
That sounds great. Any public comment? Hearing none. Jeff, Tracy, you guys got your work cut out for you with a lot of follow-up items. We'll be in touch later this week. Thank you, everybody, for your participation. We will be in touch.
Steve, are you ready for the meeting to end?
Yes. Motion to adjourn.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks.